Dan Gallagher. He is a reality therapist. I guess mostly retired.
Yes.
Mostly retired. I would like to thank Veronica, Dan, and David for giving us the signal. Up here, Suleika, the engineer for our show, and of course, Roger Guerra, who is the owner of the station here. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about pet therapy, the influence that pets have on our emotional state, psychological well being. A little bit of background on that, Dan. How long have we been using pets as therapy tools?
Uh, Pets' therapy tools really started progressing right around and during the First World War. They were used in hospitals with terribly injured soldiers, and somebody just realized that, they were intense, so they would pets or animals would come in all the time looking for food, and then they actually realized that a pet can have physical, psychological benefits to the patient, and also help them recover more quickly and
Interesting.
need less medication. But if you go back, you can see pets early on in all the world's history, different types of things as pets.
That's very interesting. I had no idea that it had been around or been being used as a tool for helping people get better faster
Right.
for
Yeah.
so long. That's
Yeah,
really,
it takes a little bit of research, but it's really surprising how often you see um, just the logic of a family member worried about another family member who's lost their husband or wife or a relationship or whatever, or just live alone, and all of a sudden bringing over a pet. And at first, there's a refusal to even acknowledge a pet. They don't want anything to do with it.
is that a normal reaction?
I think so. It's a normal reaction with pain and loneliness that I don't want anything else to take care of. I barely can take care of myself. So then what comes is that as the cousin or son or daughter or whatever starts leaving the gentleman or wife, father or mother alone, they are required to feed them. And a pet, especially dogs and cats by nature, need to be close to the person that's taking care of them. So then there's this response between animal and human that both gain something. The pet gains trust in the human, but then the human gains a feeling of comfort from the pet. So
And also
then,
that feeling of being needed because the pet
exactly.
needs affection, the pet needs water, it needs food, it needs to go outside, it needs to be walked,
Absolutely.
depending on what the pet is.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't walk a goldfish, but
No, all of those things happen, and it's in our nature from the beginning of our history that people have kept animals. I mean, we were a farming community, but there was always a favorite animal in that group for children. So it's become it's become more and more. Now we have veterans that are completely disabled, uh, quadrupedic.
plegic,
Thank you.
quadriplegic.
Said that wrong.
Happens.
Haven't had my coffee. So, and they're being trained, monkeys and dogs, and mostly that are being trained to open the door and fetch things, but within that is not enough. I had to research quite a bit of the study of how that becomes an affectionate relationship. It's not just training this pet and training the human to assist that person with commands. It over because once that's done, then the pet wants to attach to the human, whatever it is. And what you find is that that those people need less pain medication. They visit the doctor less frequently. They cope with stress better. They recover from illnesses more quickly and are less likely to feel lonely.
Well, it's nice because, especially when I was in medical school, I, would come home to basically an empty house, but I had my animals there. So unconditional love. They're
Yes.
always happy to see you, no matter
Yes.
what kind of mood you were in when
Yes.
you got
Yes.
home.
Yes. Absolutely.
Jumping up and down to see you, and
Yes.
it just made you feel like welcome and needed.
Yes. You are welcome. You're the light of their life. Without you, they're stray animals. When you talk about Bacchetti, you're talking about pets, dogs and cats, and all of them being taken care of by different individuals, and just helping them, and then waiting for an owner, because even though they're up in some sanctuary, the cat
The cat
sanctuary,
sanctuary, yeah.
dog camp, even though they're up there and they have plenty of other dogs or cats to play with, they still need human beings.
They want their human.
They want their humans.
They want their home.
Yep,
Yeah.
They really want their home. I have an interesting story. After the Marine Corps, so many years in the Marine Corps, I had many things that took 10 years, but they started bothering me, hips and knees and everything. And so I ended up going into rehab facilities, which were basically homes for the elderly and rehab facilities. And a long time before I had to go in there, I saw a story about a black cat that lived in an elderly community, a nursing home. And that when a person was getting ready to die, and the doctors knew that, and sometimes they didn't know exactly, this black cat that was part of the community would go into that room and refuse to leave. It would eat in that room. They would have to bring something in so it would go to the bathroom, but it wouldn't leave the side of the person that was getting close to death.
I recall
Right.
that story somewhere. It
It'd
was
be-
in the news
Yes, it's been
a long
into-
while ago, but
So I always have done poorly with anesthetic. It stays in my system too long. I'm very groggy. And when they were taking me out of the hospital for my knee operation, replacement of the knee, I came into the place and I actually didn't see one black cat, but I saw two. And groggily,
and
I
you said, "Uh-oh."
yes, very groggily, a little out of my mind, I said, "This isn't the cat that stays with people when they die, is it?" And they all laughed and said, "No, we have 3 or 4 of them that have just..." So these nursing homes now in Rhode Island and all over the country are starting to incorporate having a pet in there,
Good.
and feeding them. But then the pets visit the elderly. And even when you're having even the dementia wards, they have 2 or 3 animals. Usually they choose cats because dogs get too big and are too hard to handle. But occasionally there's dogs.
Little
and-
dogs.
Yes, and
Usually
rabbit-
little dogs.
and rabbits, and just put them on the bed of the person's so the person can pet them. There's a natural instinct that no matter how ill you are physically or mentally, that you will automatically pet these creatures. And that sends the endorphins in a positive direction, and for that period of time, makes you feel good and happy.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of stories. I mean, I've seen crazy ones also, like a horse being led into a nursing home and people petting the horse and
Yeah,
seeing the
absolutely.
horse. As you said, dogs and cats and rabbits and different cuddly animals
Yes.
that they use that people actually want to pet and see. And they do it for children's hospitals too.
Yes, they do. An awful lot of children's. One of the experience I had is I had a friend who was a social worker and loved horses. Could be something done here, but she decided to get horses to train, and she didn't know how, so that younger people with true physical disabilities, the lack of true movement, a lot of cognitive, brain injuries, things like that. So she created a farm of these kind of horses. And then she brought teenagers or younger kids in slowly to give them rides where a volunteer would walk with the horse so nothing would happen.
And somebody with a child to.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what she found is she had an older mayor. And the mayor, so they would introduce the few horses to the group of kids slowly and hold on to them and let them pet them and everything. But there was this one mayor that would automatically, they didn't realize it at the beginning, pick out the most severely injured child, and probably the child that had the more fear, and stay with that child, and didn't want anybody else to ride it except for the child with the most
Wow.
disability.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. And if
So
you-
animals are pretty intuitive.
animals are very intuitive, and if you go online, you'll see hundreds of thousands of stories. A dog that lost its owner and stays on the gravesite,
Yeah.
and they have to kind of feed it there for a period of time until somebody else can coax it into, another family member can coax it in the house. I mean, pets are lifelong attendees to us. They feel sadness. They instinctively know when we're in pain. They will come over. I have 2 dogs. They will come over more often. I open my refrigerator door, and that sidebar that holds things, everything fell off. And I'm Irish,
Oh, no.
and my voice says when I'm angry. And they both, either they go under the bed, which is rare, or they go outside and wait until I cook back in.
So you scared them.
So I did. My voice did scare them, and then I have to give them a lot of treats and apologize. That's just.
They even make you feel guilty then.
Yes, that's
Yes.
the other end of the spectrum. Is they feel happiness when you're happy, sadness when you're sad. They will tend to be more attentive and need you to pet them because then they know you're all right and they're all right. Or they will feel your anger, and unfortunately, with some people,
And
they
disappear.
yeah, they feel their wrath. So, one of the things I did with the research is that spending just 15 minutes with an animal was enough to increase the feel-good hormone serotonin in the brain and reduce levels of stress, depression, and anxiety. So, anyone who loses a loved one has a portion of depression. It's just natural. My wife is battling in the United States with an illness. I felt a sense of, and Dr. Shannon is my doctor, so she knows, I felt a sense of depression. It's just a natural thing. The problem with depression, and we've talked about it here, is that untreated by any means, could be your own means, it could be walking or painting or going outside or being with friends, that reduces depression. It could get to a point where a modicum of medication could help you. Depression, moderate depression, if it stays in your system 6 months, it will change the brain chemistry, so it will be a permanent
thing, yeah.
Yes.
So the
So-
earlier you get treatment, the better.
The earlier, and medication's obviously an option, and there are a ton of good medication now. But really, the options is you as a person have always known, all of us have always known how to get out of feeling bad, and it's in your arsenal from a child. Whatever it is, walking, being closer to your pet.
Calling your friends.
Call your friends, call your family in the United States, whatever you do.
Hug your dog.
Love your dog. It can be strange. It can be a little strange for other people. We now have a beautiful walking trail that I would love to do, thanks to the mayor. But we have so many. Just sit on your porch, read, listen to music. Music is a really important element for all of us. If we go back, I like 50s music and I like big band music. But that will change my mood. No matter what my mood is, sitting on my porch and just listening to music will change my mood. But you have to do that. You have to recognize that you're not yourself. That perhaps you're having a little harder time getting out of bed. Sleeping too much is an indication. If you don't have pain,
Not sleeping enough.
not sleeping enough. For me, it's sleeping too much. But not sleeping enough would be like my wife, because she perseverates. She keeps thinking of things over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Those things change, but something like that, perhaps not washing as often as you did, letting your house go less clean or a little more messy than usual.
Falling out of your normal habits.
Absolutely. Then you have to analyze yourself and say, what has happened to me, and why am I feeling like this? And okay, what can I do to make myself feel better? And those things will eliminate minor depression. Moderate depression, you've kind of not asked the question too early. As a therapist, I think that way. So now you have moderate depression. It may be that you'll need some medicinal assistance, but still need to go do all those things,
Yeah.
because moderate depression won't last as long, and the effort you make yourself to do the things that used to make you happy will make it easier to get off the medication quickly and become your normal self again.
I've had a lot of patients on short-term medications.
Yes.
What seems to help the most is, you ask, do you have a pet at home?
Yes.
Do
yes.
you have or a partner at home or a pet?
Excellent.
Whatever. Jerry. And if the answer is no, well, why not?
Yes.
Why not? Why don't you have one? Unless they're physically unable, obviously, to take
yes.
care of an animal. But then you say, well, do you have a friend that
Yes.
has an animal that can come visit?
Yes.
I do that a lot. I make suggestions. Do you like art? Do you like to draw? Do you like to paint? Do you like to go watch the sunrise
Yes.
at the beach? Get someone to go with you to the beach, or
Right.
just go by yourself even.
Right.
But there are different things that you can do. Do you like to ride a bike? Well, go out and ride out all that anxiety.
No,
There's a lot of options besides just animals if you
Yes.
cannot have an animal for
Those-
some reason.
Those are excellent things to ask as a physician, especially if somebody's coming in and saying, doesn't have any physical pain, but I don't feel like myself. And by the way,
And I don't want meds.
Right.
A lot say I don't
Right,
want medication.
but by the way, once you start feeling depressed, the serotonin levels will reduce, and you will, and I did this pet therapy for the elderly, you will start feeling physical pain. That's a natural segue into feeling depressed or anxious or any type of anxiety, is that once you start feeling like that, all of a sudden you're not your usual self, and the physical pain that you naturally have being an elderly,
Gets worse.
elderly is for the brave. It's not for people weak of mind.
Especially the ones that are injured from
Right.
their careers and
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
The
It's
ones that have been jumping out of airplanes.
Right.
And
So it's not for the weak of mind. Takes a lot of courage to be elderly.
you don't really have a choice, though.
You might not. But
Yeah, you kind of
it's-
have to. Everybody
it-
gets there.
Yes, you do. So how we get there and what we do with it, if these are the last years of our life, and it could be 10 or 20 or whatever, then what are we doing with it to make them the best years of our life? All of us worked and retired or did wonderful things in the United States, and now we come here to be happy. Well, what are we doing to be happy? What are we doing to feel better? But
You volunteer.
I volunteer. I do. But the thing is that the pressure from the United States doesn't stop. If we have children and grandchildren, if we're in the United States, we see things politically happening. That doesn't stop. So then how do we hear these things from our loved ones, but go back, but not feel, so you'll feel some minor time where you feel a little bit depressed. But then what do you do to get yourself back? What do you do to get yourself? Well, if you walked every day, then the very next day you get up and walk. If you're, for me, if your porch is an excellent source of seeing this beautiful land, then you go out on the porch, whether it's having a coffee out there or whatever.
I had a disabled neighbor who was also a vet that had an electric wheelchair, and I would see him, instead of just sitting around on his front porch or, being depressed, get out in this electric wheelchair because he could,
Yes,
and just go up and down the street in his electric wheelchair,
Yes.
getting sun,
Yes.
saying hi to people along the way.
absolutely. This place we live in, while it can have 6 months of rain, even in the
Can.
rainy days, most of them have an element of sun. So this place, to see things of beauty, is an easy fix for feeling depressed.
The fairgrounds right now.
Absolutely, the fairgrounds grounds. There's just so many things that can improve.
They did a great job this year. Have you driven by there?
I have.
They did an awesome
Yeah.
job this year.
Yeah.
From what I can see from the outside.
Yes. I'm not political, but I have to say that this current mayor, has done an awful lot of wonderful things to improve everybody's good feelings, such as the park down there and the walking trails. I mean, he really has done a wonderful
And
job.
I believe, sticking to the theme of today's show, is that you're allowed to bring your animals
Yes,
in.
yes,
Yeah.
you are. Yes, you are. So we're talking about depression and anxiety. We're talking about the way you cope with it. Depression is, I don't feel like myself. I'm not happy, as happy as I usually am. And it's how long it lasts. All of us get that way for a day or two. But how long is it lasting? And then you have to start evaluating yourself and figuring out, okay, what you need to do to feel like yourself. What have you stopped doing? Have you stopped, as we go back, have you stopped
That's a
walking?
good question. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to remember that one for
Yes.
my patients.
Yes.
Yeah.
What have you stopped doing that used to make you happy? That's an excellent indicator that a person is not feeling like themselves. And if they have few physical ailments, then something there. I did Samaritans for a long, long time, 15 years. I went in the prisons and created a lifeline program for them. But one of the things one of my earlier phone conversations was with a young lady, I assumed, by her voice, that was depressed and couldn't do anything. And all I got out of her after an hour is that her plants were dying, and she couldn't water them. So I'm going back and forth, and you really rack your brain to try to think of something that would help or get to the heart of the matter. And something in my head said, those plants mean something, but I'm not hearing what it is. So I finally said to her, let's call her Jane. I said, Jane, you're not watering your plants, which is an easy thing to do, and they're dying, and it's really hurting you. Why? And I heard a long sigh, and it took about a minute, and she said, my father would come over every day, and he loved my green thumb and my plants, and he just died a month ago. So nothing might be that serious, but evaluating your moods on a daily or weekly basis and seeing, are you in the same place? Are you enjoying the same things? Have you stopped doing some things you enjoy, and what's the reason for it? You go to Dr. Shannon, if you have physical pain, that can be a reason. But if everything's about the same and you're coping physically the same, then what has changed? It almost never, it's nearly impossible to become depressed. I have to say this right, and I apologize. To become depressed just because you're going to become depressed. Some impetus, something in
Some
a person.
trigger.
There's a trigger in a person's life, whether it's plants and your father dying, whatever it is, something has changed to make you change the very habits that kept you level and happy. We're creatures that exist on doing things at a certain time every day and utilizing the good things and sometimes the bad things, like your refrigerator explodes when you open it up and you swear at your pets or you swear at yourself. So, but there are all kinds of things that can motivate you. Volunteering, you mentioned. All
Volunteering
kinds
is
of
great.
things.
There's all kinds of organizations here. There's Dog Camp.
geez,
There's
yeah.
the Cat Sanctuary.
Yes.
There's the Red Cross. There's
Yes.
the Rotary.
Yes.
There's
100 things. If you're a
Boquete Health and Hospice.
veteran, Boquete Veterans BVO organization.
There's the
for
ladies that
example.
knit. There's the knitting
yes,
group.
yes. There's now a reading group. There's
there's-
many reading groups. There's people who have always wanted to write, and there's in the Tuesday market, our Tuesday market, there are people that have a table that want to help you write your memoirs or just write. So there are a ton and listen, people come in here. A person came up to me when I was at the Tuesday market for the mail and said, basically, or didn't say to me, said to somebody else, that he loves chess and he's a pretty good expert at chess. So he wanted to find a way to help people learn chess or get better at chess.
That
So
that happened at the library, right? They did the
that's
chess group.
from
Yeah,
the
yeah.
from the Bocchetti, yes, from the BCP.
Oh, okay.
That's so. There's always somebody that comes in with an expert, that's an expert or good at something that wants to share it with other people. And you have to really. You don't have to look very far to turn around and find one of those people right on your
Exactly.
left or right.
So we're going to take a quick musical break. We're going to listen to Perfect Duet by Ed Sheeran featuring Beyonce, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Darling, just dive right in. Follow my lead. Well, I found a girl, beautiful and sweet. Well, I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what it was. I will not give you up this time. Well, darling, just kiss me slow. Your heart is all I own, and in your eyes you're holding mine. Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass. We're listening to our favorite song. When you said you looked a mess, I whispered underneath my breath, but you heard it. Darling, you look perfect tonight.
Well, I found a man stronger than anyone I know. He shares my dreams. I hope that someday we'll share our home. I found love to carry more than just my secrets, to carry love, to carry children of our own. We are still kids, but we're so in love, fighting against all odds. I know we'll be alright this time. Darling, just hold my hand. Be your girl, you'll be my man. And I see my future in your eyes. Well, baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms, barefoot on the grass, while listening to our favorite song. When I saw you in that dress, looking so beautiful, I don't deserve this. Darling, you look perfect tonight.
Welcome back to the show. We're back on with Dan Gallagher, and we're talking a little bit about pet therapy and its use in psychology, its use in medicine, its use for patients in the hospital when they're depressed, as pets in home to alleviate symptoms of depression or anxiety, or just to help somebody that's disabled.
Yes.
Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about the history and when they first started using pets as therapy tools back in World War II.
Well, World War One, they
World War
started.
One, okay.
One, they started. Two, they started thinking about how pets could help disabled veterans. It didn't catch on until about 20 years ago. But World War One, they started realizing that animals would come into tents looking for food and all of a sudden attach themselves to somebody that was severely physically hurt. So that's, and I'm sure the history goes back a lot farther. The type of animals I found range from cats, dogs, rabbits do an awful lot. Birds, because they tend to sing and make noise and always seem happy in the morning. Guinea pigs are big on it,
Yeah.
surprisingly,
That is a
because
surprise.
like rabbits, they can be held. And horses, of course.
Not everybody can have a horse in their
no,
house.
but do have a place. But here with all the people that do have horses,
They
I,
do.
I
They do.
felt it was safer for me to mention.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Here you can. There's some people that are renting and they cannot have animals in their house, but they can go visit a friend with an animal. They can probably go to the stables and pet the horses. They can
They can.
possibly do a trail ride. I know people rent out their horses or just take friends out on trail rides and that kind of thing.
Right.
There's a lot of things you can do if you can't own a pet because you're renting or you have too small of a house or an apartment. There are other ways that you can go out and get a little pet therapy.
Absolutely, but you have to all realize also when a landlord says no pets, he's really talking about dogs and cats. He's not talking about guinea pigs and rabbits and birds.
Right.
They could
Pets
be-
that do more damage.
Right,
Is what
so
they're worried
you-
about.
As small as your place is, then that determines the size of the creature that you want to have. So that's part of it. And we talked about the other thing to talk about is that because a pet needs your help, there's an increased level in mobility. So a person that the doctor is saying you've got to do more exercise, just think about a dog who needs walks. So that can be your exercise. So mobility, or just going to feed whatever creature you have, increases the mobility, decreases, helps the serotonin, but also decreases if you have arthritis or things like that.
Also, physical activity kind of brings up your mood.
Absolutely. So that's one of the, it reduces blood pressure, which is something I found, which I look for, that's in a lot of studies, that people with pets who have high blood pressure like myself, it tends to reduce your blood pressure, or people that are on the borderline of taking a pill for blood pressure. Having a pet tends to reduce your blood pressure. So that's an interesting, and as I said, increased motor skills. It simply keeps you moving, improves your mood, but it keeps you moving because you have to do some things to take care of your pet. And you get an obligation very fast. The people that refuse to have one, they'll be talked into it. Well, why don't you keep this for a day
Yeah.
or a week? And then
Just foster for a little
that's
bit.
it.
Yeah.
And then the attachment happens very quickly. We are human beings that like to be attached to
Yeah,
creatures.
I could never foster. I would never give them up.
No, that's it.
I'd have 100 dogs.
Well, that's the kind of thing that they're hoping for, is
Yes.
that you won't give them up. We fostered our second dog, and I said to my wife, when she talked about it, that's a little ridiculous because, once we foster the dog, we're going to own the dog. So we stopped at 2, and they're perfect for each other and us. So.
Well, not just depression, not just recovering from an injury, but also they use animals with children with things like autism,
Yes.
social phobias, nonverbal, or those that just have such low self-esteem, don't have any friends, to kind of bring them out of their shells. I mean, it's actually helped those nonverbal children become slightly more verbal, or at least more outgoing,
Right.
instead of curled up inside themselves.
So mental stimulation.
Mental
A
stimulation.
pet that, no matter what your cognitive skills, a pet changes the dynamic in your life, whether it's for a few minutes, 15 minutes, or whether it's forever. It changes the dynamic. Just watching a pet, showing interest in it, so mental stimulation is a big part of what a pet does for us. And yes, it improves anybody, no matter what the cognitive skills are or what the physical limitations are.
Yeah.
That's an absolute.
Animals don't care. They don't see it.
No, not
They
at all.
can't tell.
Nope.
It's normal to them
Yep.
that you don't speak, or that you don't walk, or
Right.
that you can't pick
Right.
something up.
Right.
That's normal to them.
Yes, absolutely. So It's an enhanced sense of purpose and meaning. It has a calming effect on negative behaviors. It's associated with improvement for dementia, your social skills, anything like that. Anything that calms the mind, no matter what the physical problems you have or mental problems, anything that calms the mind tends to increase the mental capacity and stimulation. If that's not understandable. I mean,
That's understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, animals do tend to stimulate your mind and your emotions and your drive. You have to think. What does the animal want from me?
Yes.
What do they need
Yeah,
from me
yeah.
right now?
Yes, yes.
Do they need to go outside? Do they need to eat? Do they need water? Do they just want to cuddle? What are they looking for from
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, absolutely. And most times they're just looking to get close to you.
The interaction.
Interaction with
Yeah.
a human being is one of the best elements ever created in an animal. Is they want to be around a human being. So I think that it's just great for stress. It lowers stress and anxiety completely. And the other thing, it gives you a chance. This is something I found, and I thought about it before I found it. A chance to reminisce. Most of us who have gotten into our 60s and 70s had a pet when we were young, probably a dog or a cat. It doesn't matter what it was. But that dog, looking at that creature, even though it looks different, it gives us a chance to go back to happier times and reminisce. And that reminiscing brings your mind into a happier place and lets I'll call it the blues or the mood change so that you can feel better for a moment that can have effects on you for the whole day. So that's what a creature does. I hadn't had a creature since we came here. Our test died for like 15 years. But getting an animal, I don't know what I would do with Sarah in the States battling an illness, what I would do if I didn't have both my dogs with me. I really don't know how I would cope. So animals, they bring you back. So when I look at both of my animals now, Hope and Scout, I think back to my animal Tess that hasn't been around for 15 years. And then I go farther and think about the animals I had as a kid and what joy they brought me. And they just give you a feeling of hope. There's no other way to explain it. All the scientists are trying to figure this out. They write papers on it. But my point of looking at all this is they give you a feeling of hopefulness.
I don't think anybody's been so excited to see me more than my dogs.
Yes. Every time you come in, even if you come in every 15 minutes, the dogs are there to greet you with more happiness that you'll ever see, usually in a human being. So,
I actually have a dog that gives hugs.
oh, wow.
He comes up and he's a big dog.
Yeah.
He's a Weimaraner.
Yeah,
And
that's
he
a
comes
big
up.
dog.
He can put his paws on your shoulder
Yes.
while you're standing, and he just rubs his head up against you and grabs you with his
Yeah, yeah.
paws. I mean, he gives the best hugs.
Yeah. That's what we're talking about. And, I'm not suggesting that people go out and automatically get a pet if they're living alone. It's a thought process. It's about size.
Their work too.
Yeah, it's about size. It's about what you need, what you can cope with, what you can be able to take care of. But it is a part of my toolbox for helping people. It's become more and more a part, especially with reality therapists, a part of other people's toolboxes.
Definitely. Like I said, I even ask, when they say
I
they're
know.
all alone,
I
they
think
have
that's
nobody,
wonderful.
and I'll even ask, well, do you have an animal at least? You
Yes.
can talk to your animal, and they're not going to tell anybody what you say.
No, not at all. No, they take an oath just like a therapist.
They
I
don't
know.
care.
No, they just care about you.
That's
Yes,
right.
It's a wonderful feeling.
And it gives you something to do instead of just sitting around going, okay, I'm all alone, now what?
Yes, yes.
It actually gives you a purpose, something to do.
It decreases boredom because the animal is always active doing something. Even when they're sleeping, they're a little active. So it decreases the boredom in your life, and that boredom could turn into a point of contention with some forms of levels, no matter how minor, of depression, because you might have lost some mobility, and now the things you were able to do, you're not quite able to do it. I was a great hiker, very good hiker, mountains and everything. So with being on crutches pretty permanently, it stopped me from doing something very important in my life. So I volunteered. I got out and did things. If I didn't have my wife pushing me, but also myself pushing me, because I knew that I couldn't do something if I kept thinking about it and thinking about what was, instead of thinking about what was taken away, I had to start thinking about what I could give myself to replace it.
Right. And that's something that you have to do with somebody that's lost a loved one.
Yes,
There's a lot of people that come here as a couple,
yes,
elderly.
yes,
One of them passes.
yes,
The other one's like, now what?
yes.
Now
yeah.
what? We always did everything together.
Yeah.
We'd go out to dinner. We'd go on walks. We'd
Yeah.
go on hikes. Now what do I do?
Yes. There has been no person that I've ever known that's come to therapy or friendships that loses a person in their life for whatever reason. That other person, no matter how much you argued, I had an uncle and aunt that were married for 37 years, and they argued every day of their life. But when you're missing that element of connection, then things start to change and your mind starts to
Yeah.
change. And you need to quickly start thinking about what you can do as an alternate for what you lost. And it is a loss, no matter what happens. My wife in the States, that's a loss. Yes, she's doing really well, and we talk every day, but that's still a loss in my life. And I need to do some. I need to continue to do the things I'm doing. One of the things about loss is it stops you in your tracks from doing anything. That period of grief gives you an opportunity, but before it gives you an opportunity, it stagnates you. It makes you not want to think about anything but the sadness. But some period when that's stopping to be so intense, you have to start thinking about movement, mental and physical movement. What are you going to do now? Do something simple. A lot of my clients, I would ask them to do journaling, because it was a record of how they were feeling at the moment, but it was also a record of what they did about it. So if in the future they ever got into that state, they would have an understanding written down of how they could cope with it,
How to get back out of it.
how to get back out of it. Yes, absolutely. One of the most important elements.
When I lost my dog a couple of years ago, it was the same thing. We were just grieving and grieving
Yes.
over this dog. We put all of our effort into our other dog, obviously, and gave him lots of love. But it was hard to get through that point because it's just another member of your family.
Yes, it is.
They've been around your family for the 10 years, whatever
Yes,
it was.
yes.
And all of a sudden they're not there. So you don't have their silly quirks. You
Yeah.
don't have, the daily interaction with that animal
Yes.
anymore. And it's just like losing a family member. And the only way that I could get past that was to put all my effort into the other dog who I knew was suffering too, because they grew up together. So that's slowly you come out of it, but it's difficult. It's not an easy thing.
If you think about it, usually your pet is the nicest family member you have. Because they don't argue, they don't give you grief. They're kind of the nicest family member you can have. So losing them is an important element of your mental health. Doing something about it is an important element of keeping good mental health.
And
Yes.
eventually we got another dog, but it was hard to think about
Yes.
replacing that other
Yes.
animal. So.
Yes, absolutely. But then you see, kind of with the new animal, you see some familiarity with what the other one
Yeah.
did, and it's like any grief of losing someone. There is an end point, and what you switch over to is going back to good memories, and it doesn't hurt as much, and then that continues. I lost a beloved sister-in-law and brother, my only brother, to COVID before they had
Right.
the shots in Florida. And now it's been a year for one and two for the other, and now I think of the good times we had when we were kids. So, and it helps.
Yeah.
And when I do think about it and get sad, what happens? But one of the other dogs come over and sits next to me and looks up at you like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah.
So,
Snap out of it.
snap out of it. Exactly. You have things to do.
Yeah, you have to
You-
feed me.
You have things to do for me, and I don't need you looking like this. Yes. And that's the intuitiveness.
They do know.
Yeah.
They do know.
They do. They absolutely do.
You start ignoring them. Like, hello.
Yes. Yes.
You know what time it is? It's past my dinner time.
Yes.
Or I need to go out now.
Absolutely. My wife doesn't like them sleeping on the bed, but automatically they're sleeping on my bed. So she'll have to cure them of that because they usually stay in her room.
Don't worry,
But-
she's probably not listening.
No. It's a little too far to listen. But one of her friends will tell her she has many friends.
Yes.
Yes.
Shelley being one of them.
Yes,
Shelley's
Shelley
been
being
helping
one.
you out a lot.
Yes, she has. Shelley and Tony have
Yeah.
been two of the best things that have happened to me. And many others. Alan Day, Al, who does it.
Right.
There
Al.
are so many, too many to mention, that have stepped up. And that's what
Well, he's a fellow Marine too.
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and that's what human beings do. Other people step up.
Yeah.
Sometimes the worst thing about us when we're in grief or unhappy is that we push away the very people that really want to help us. And we have to be aware of that and consciously let those people back in our life. Those people need to be respectful of our grief, whatever the grief is, but we have to, so they have to understand that. But the person that has the grief has to understand that you need human beings around you, and you need your pets around you. if you
Definitely
have
need your pets.
Yes.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. Real quick, once again, how to identify if you're depressed.
Okay. So change in moods and attitudes. Sleeping a lot, not sleeping enough, not taking care of the daily chores that you always do. Letting them go for a day, 2 days, or a week. Letting everything get ahead of you where you were a person that took care of things on a daily basis. Not doing your enjoyable things, not the things that got you out, whether it was walks, whatever stimulated you during the day and you're not doing it, especially if it becomes a period of time of a week or weeks, then something's wrong. You have to look back and see what the loss is. It doesn't have to be a loss of life, but what the loss is. A best friend that no longer is talking to you over an argument. What is the loss? And that is intruded in your ability to function in a daytime and feel good about yourself. We function with a level of chores or things we need to do, and that's how we feel good about human beings. If that has stopped, then and stopped for a month, then you have a difficult decision to make, and your decision better be perhaps to come to see Dr. Shannon or seek out a friend, because there's not a lot of psychology here, therapy here.
Not
So-
English speaking anyway.
No.
Not
So
English
seek
speaking.
out a friend. It is also a country that doesn't necessarily, it's very family oriented. They live in multiple layers, so they don't think of, I have to see an outsider, especially the Latin cultures, seek an outsider.
Right.
I have plenty of people around me.
Right,
to seek.
exactly.
So yes, but seek out a friend, close advisor.
If your symptoms are mild, try to get back to doing what you like to do first. If that's
Absolutely.
not working, then go and
Absolutely.
seek help.
Absolutely. If you just feel that you're in such a place where you don't have the minor bit of energy to do anything that you used to do on a daily basis, then that's where you're getting in trouble. And if you do that if that stays too long, you're responsible to do the things to make you comfortable in life and happy. If you stop doing them, then depression will come. That's a guarantee. And then the longer you keep that depression, the longer it will unmotivate you for everything. The more it stays, the more unmotivated you become. And then you have trouble getting back to where you are. And depression, as I said, after 6 months, even though you can get back and doing the things you want, you can force yourself, you might have to think about alternates such as medication.
Right, and I know in my case, I've had to put off my usual hikes in the mornings
Right.
that I usually do every day, and then you go to work, and those same stressors are there.
Yes.
But you
Yes.
don't have that same release you had.
Yes.
So it just keeps building up, building up, building up.
Yes.
I'm ready to get back to my routine.
Yes. Yes. Also, in a position like a therapist or a doctor here, people tend to come to you pretty angry, and
They come to me with physical symptoms
yes,
first,
Yes.
and then you kind of narrow it down.
yes,
And you find out, okay, something else is going on here.
yes, yes.
Because these aren't normal physical pains.
Right. Or if the physical pain has been there for 20 or 30 years and that's what they're
Yeah.
complaining about, then there's another element to the mental part of it.
Uh-huh.
And I like what you said about how you asked those questions, Dr. Shannon. That's a very smart doctor that everybody should think about seeing. And Dr.
Come see me.
Gomez.
Come see me.
And Dr. Gomez was in the same place.
Yeah,
So
he
both
could
of them.
identify problems too.
Yes, he
and,
can.
And, you know, if
Yeah.
you can't get in the afternoons to come see me, definitely go see him.
Absolutely.
But don't let it just sit there and
No,
fester, because
don't
the
linger.
longer it is, the more the brain chemicals change, the harder it is to get out of it.
The more trouble you're in.
The more trouble
It's-
you're
it
in.
could be permanent, honestly, and that's not the way we worked all our life, especially people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and their friends of mine in the 90s. We didn't work our whole life and be honorable people to now come to a stage where we were unhappy and couldn't do all the things we planned on doing.
Yeah, you have to keep your goals set
Yes,
and work towards those goals.
yes, no matter what your limits are.
Well, I would like to thank Dan Gallagher
Thank you.
for having a very interesting chat with me this morning
Yes.
about depression, about animals, about ways you can improve your life,
Yes,
not only through animals, but also just through your daily activities.
and we should thank your mother who sat in here.
She did. She sat in
did.
through the whole thing. She was enjoying.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
I would also like to once again thank Suleika, our engineer for today. She's been working hard over there, making sure everything runs smoothly. Veronica down in David, because she's letting us use the signal to be
Yes.
on the air today. And of course, Roger Guerra, the owner of this station up here in Boquete.
Yes.
You are listening to Radio Chiriqui 103.3. This has